Like the Western Athletic Conference before it, the Mountain West Conference has been framed by the Rocky Mountains and the Pacific Ocean. While its history is less star-studded and without as much of the high-flying offenses and the on-the-fly history the WAC was known for late in its life, the Mountain West has still found a way to carve out a spot as one of the most intense group of 5 conferences in college sports, even finding a way to become even bigger than and ingest the vast majority of the conference that spawned it, a rare occurrence in the college sports world. Last video, we looked at the entire history of the WAC and what its future will look like. In this video, I aim to do the same with the conference that split from the WAC in 1999 and try to determine how it made itself the better conference of the two and how it managed to survive longer and stronger. Despite only being around for 25 years, the history of the Mountain West itself has many twists and turns, with a few moments in the past and the present where the league could almost have made a push to be a new power conference, or could have failed to learn from the shortcomings of the WAC and doomed themselves to the same fate. This is the history of the Mountain West Conference. I won't go over the history of the WAC since I've already made that video. You can watch it here. Instead, I'll go right to the Mountain West formation in 1999 and the interesting meeting that finally broke the camel's back. Right, so as I mentioned in the WAC history, the conference had made the split-second decision in 1996 to go ahead and add 6 teams: UNLV, San Jose State, Tulsa, Rice, SMU, and TCU, bringing their total conference membership to 16 teams in a time where the largest a power conference had reasonably achieved was 12. The SoCon in the 30s before it had upwards of 20-plus members, and it had collapsed terribly. With a conference that stretched from Houston, Texas up through Wyoming and as far as Hawaii, the amount of travel and sheer geographic discontinuity throughout the conference was sure to bring up some hard feelings. And it did, but not as much as an odd scheduling system that had teams playing each other in 2 divisions that were more like a collection of pods than anything else. According to Tom Dienhart at Rivals.com in 2011, there was skepticism from the jump, even from the conference's recently hired commissioner, Carl Benson. Not just from Benson himself, but from just about every athletic director in the conference. But the primary issue of no real easy way to split the massive league into divisions continued to be the largest problem the conference would face, and it would eventually kill it, with the pod system failing to ease tensions. Utah and BYU wanted permanent divisions, Air Force and a few other schools threatened independence if that happened. Something had to change. Prominent athletics figures from Utah, BYU, Colorado State, Air Force, and Wyoming met in the Denver airport in 1998 and decided they would split from the WAC to create a new conference. New Mexico, UNLV, and San Diego State would come with them. The conference would start play in 1999 as the Mountain West Conference. They hired their first commissioner, Craig Thompson, who would remain the conference's commissioner from its inception up through 2022. It didn't take long after the conference's creation for it to win its first championship, a women's cross-country title in 1999 won by BYU. Utah would claim the conference's first big game victory that same year as well, with a 17-16 victory in the Las Vegas Bowl over, ironically enough, former WAC conference foe Fresno State. It became immediately clear that the better half of the WAC was the half that had left. In fact, so good was the Mountain West for a non-power conference that Utah was even selected to play in the 2004 Fiesta Bowl as the first non-automatic qualifying school, read non-power conference, to participate in a BCS bowl game. Led by head coach Urban Meyer and quarterback Alex Smith, the Utes went undefeated in the regular season and managed to crush Pittsburgh in the game. They were the first BCS busters. 2005 saw the Mountain West roster grow by 1 with the addition of TCU from Conference USA. The Horned Frogs were mainly a football ad, with memories of LaDainian and Tomlinson still echoing in the former WAC conference mates' heads. But they had just come off a disappointing 5-6 season in Conference USA. They instantly torched the Mountain West in 2005 to the tune of an 11-1 record and an outright conference title. Also in 2005, according to the Mountain West website, the conference was one of the first to experiment with instant replay as a factor in ruling. 2007 saw the conference's first women's postseason tournament, technically, as Wyoming won the WNIT, making it there by beating... gosh dang it. You know what, just for that, 1993 Copper Bowl. Anyway, the conference continued with these 9 members until 2010, when Boise State announced their addition into the conference away from the WAC. This confirmed suspicions that the Mountain West growth profile would continue to be in taking members from the existing WAC. But this was especially painful to the WAC as the Broncos had been an ascendant program in the conference. Later that same year, to get to 12, the conference announced additions from 2 more WAC programs, Nevada and Fresno State, as well as football-only membership with the University of Hawaii all around the 2012 season. Interestingly enough, the original aim of the Mountain West wasn't Hawaii, but Utah State, with the Aggies having turned down an invitation in 2010, according to ESPN writer Andrea Adelson. The addition of Hawaii, even as just a football-only affiliate, was mainly done as a stopgap or insurance due to TCU's loud flirting with the Big East Conference, which was in the process of losing members to the ACC in 2010. The Big 12's impending collapse seemed to be advantageous for the Mountain West, with the now laughable possibility of adding Kansas, Kansas State, and Iowa State seeming surprisingly possible to the outside world. TCU would in fact leave the Mountain West in 2011, but not for the flailing Big East. They would join the Big 12 alongside West Virginia. TCU was not the only school to leave the conference in 2011, though. Utah announced that they would be joining the Pac-12 conference that same year, and BYU sought independence now that their primary rival in conference was gone. This left the Mountain West with just 10 teams, but there was no intention of staying that way. In fact, the conference was heavily considering making the exact same mistake that the WAC had made that caused their original members to split from the conference. According to ESPN in 2011, the Mountain West and Conference USA were both interested in merging their football leagues together to create a 22-team East-West Superconference that would span the entirety of the country, plus Hawaii. This move was made in desperation, as both leagues were set to lose members to the Big East and desperately needed some sort of gimmick to keep themselves valuable as leagues and valuable to the schools that were on the fence. Echoing modern discussions about 20-plus team leagues, this league would have only had this massive structure for football, as the other sports would still operate as their separate conferences. Of course, this proposal fell through. The most important problem encountered by the conglomerate of conferences, according to CBS Sports, was that the Mountain USA would technically only be one conference, despite having 20-plus teams, meaning they would only get one set of bowl bids, and they would have to merge for all sports, meaning problems would quickly arise with basketball and revenue distribution conference-wide. While a short-lived alliance was mentioned and planned for, that too never came to pass. But their farming grounds, the Western Athletic Conference, still held valuable assets. In 2013, San Jose State and Utah State left the WAC for the Mountain West. The Aggies would prove themselves as valuable additions early, making the inaugural Mountain West Football Championship game in 2013. Boise State and San Diego State, who had flirted with joining the Big East much like TCU had, decided to stay in the Mountain West that same year, with the BCS-busting Broncos earning a higher share of the revenue pie in the conference as incentive to stay. The Mountain West added their second affiliate member in 2014, adding Colorado College for women's soccer. For the most part, since 2013, the conference has stayed remarkably consistent in its memberships, especially for a group of 5 conference. There were brief moments where this was in question, though. According to the San Diego Union Tribune in 2018, the conference had reached out to 6 total schools about a possible expansion, with the one school name dropped being Gonzaga, who would play as a non-football member to offset Hawaii as a football-only member. The next scare came in 2023, with the collapse of the Pac-12 following USC and UCLA's announced departure for the Big Ten the year prior. Now follow along closely because this timeline gets a little confusing. To retain influence in Southern California, many had considered San Diego State a prime option for Pac expansion. In June of 2023, Pete Tamel reported that SDSU told the Mountain West that it would be leaving the conference for an unspecified conference and asked for an extension to avoid paying departure fees. Simply put, the Aztecs had been told by a conference that they would be added, but said conference was dragging their feet on additions due to interior infighting. The theory was that the Pac-12 wanted the Aztecs, but couldn't come to terms about an entry package that satisfied SDSU brass. But SDSU was still considering leaving for another conference, as the Big 12 also seemed interested in adding the Aztecs, at least from an outsider's perspective. When it became clear no invite was coming fast enough, Aztec brass asked for an extension. The Mountain West called San Diego State's bluff instead, according to Dean Strake at CBS Sports, considering the notice as formal intentions to leave, and started the process of kicking the Aztecs out of the conference. Aztec president Adela de la Torre embarrassedly pleaded with the conference that it was not a notice of resignation. What ended up happening was that the Pac-12 collapsed before they could invite the Aztecs, and it became very apparent that the Big 12 was just using San Diego State as a bargaining piece for leverage with 4 other Pac-12 schools. San Diego State embarrassed itself on a national stage and announced it would officially stay with the conference for the future, reaching a settlement with the conference that, from the outside, seems like being put in timeout for arguing with your mom and her being right. Let that be a lesson to never argue with your mom when you know she's right. After the collapse of the Pac-12, it started to look more and more like the remaining 2 programs, Oregon State and Washington State, would be relegated to joining the Mountain West as the 13th and 14th members. While the 2 schools were officially able to retain rights to the Pac-12 conference, they will be entering into a scheduling agreement with the Mountain West for football games. The unique schedule has every Mountain West school play Oregon State or Washington State at least once. While the other 2 schools will be joining the West Coast Conference for other sports, this does begin to feel a little bit like an entry for the 2 schools in the conference. Or perhaps a reverse merger, where the Pac-12 name is slapped onto the Mountain West with the 2 former schools joining. Who knows? At this point, it's all wrapped up in legalese. Most of this was done under a new commissioner, Gloria Nevarez, who took over for Craig Thompson in 2023, who formerly held the same position for the West Coast Conference. Her goal now seems obvious. Now that the Pac-12 is gone, attempt to find a way to maneuver her conference to either the top of the group of 5 or potentially into a race with the Big 12 and ACC for the last remaining, quote, power lifeboat before the SEC and Big 10 split from the NCAA entirely. It's a massive undertaking, one that will be very, very difficult to succeed in, especially considering the disparity between the Mountain West and those other 2 power conferences being almost as large as the disparity between those other conferences and the SEC and Big 10. Consolidation of teams has created a storm to navigate for the group of 5. But what do you guys think the future of the Mountain West holds? Are they the best group of 5 conference out there? Will they merge with the Pac-12 to create another super conference? Or will the 2 Pac fully join them? What about Gonzaga? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, be civil in the comments, be safe out there, and enjoy the climb. I'll see you next time.